you have to understand that this CPU is only £29, and for that £29, the performance that you do get out of the CPU is exceptional. There are other CPUs on places like eBay and Craigslist and all these types of sites where you can buy second user stuff, and let's be honest, if you was buying a Xeon brand new and it was still retail package, that this processor is still going to be costing you about 100 to 200 pounds, because the companies just aren't going to want to sell it for next to nothing. They want to get their money back. But you have to look at it like this: there are lesser Xeons on other platforms that aren't as powerful as this processor, that are costing high, 38 to 40 odd pound. It's just not as good as this processor. For £29, no matter how you want to find the cons to this processor, there really is none when you think about it for what you're getting for the price. It can handle the AAA games that as we use it as like a host processor to the decent graphics card at 1080p. It can handle those higher settings on those AAA games that we've tried so far. I do want to do another video when I get a chance. I've just got to get a new hard drive with some more capacity, put Grand Theft Auto 5 on there, and we'll see how it goes. It's another one that people will be interested in. They like to play at the minute, and they'll see how this processor performs it with that. But you have to understand things like these, the overclockable Pentiums of the past few newer platforms that have came out. They're selling on eBay for something like 40 odd pound, 50 odd pound, and they're not as good. They're not as powerful as a processor as this. Even when they're overclocked, they might be good, but it's still a dual core. The Pentium, this is a 6-core 12 thread. Yeah, it's Sandy Bridge. It's newer than a lot of this. It's newer than the Nehalem and the Linfield the i5 and i7s, and it's a newer IPC than there. It's still, the same architecture the i5 2600 has, the Sandy Bridge, and a lot of them are still, people are still rocking their quad core versions, if you want, of Sandy Bridge. A con of this was that it was coming in at clocks at 2.5 gigahertz instead of being around about 2.8 to 3 gigahertz to start with. We have overclocked it. We've got near 3.1 gigahertz out of it with an overclock. So that is possible using the turbo multiplier. So we have kind of generated those speeds. Okay, but I mean, even the way it is, a lot of games these days are using no more than 4 cores. But with the APIs coming out and DirectX 12, Vulkan, they're going to start using more cores. You might even see this processor turn the corner, and gain even more gaming power, if you like, out of those that kind of scenario that's to come. It's not quite right at the minute, but I noticed some people's results for the current DirectX 12 wasn't quite as what they were expecting, but they have noticed that sometimes Vulkan on things like Doom, the latest Doom, has performed relatively well, especially with their AMD based cards and things like that. So there is promise there for processors like this, and indeed the older, maybe even the older AMD FX series that wasn't a good performer, single threaded, dual threaded applications and games, things like that. But the cores, the 8 cores, what they do have and things like that, they even may start to turn a corner as well. So there might be some longevity, why things are going there in this processor down the line. I'll use this processor for the the next 6 months to a year or so. I was looking to upgrade my music production PC. I was looking for a Ryzen platform for that. At the minute it's got an AMD Phenom 2 quad core CPU in there, and the reason for that was the way it's a little bit hard for me to go into. Scan.co.uk actually has a more in-depth reasoning on this, how music programs work, and how the fact that certain processors work better with those or certain processors architectures work better with the way how music programs operate. The AMD FX line were poor in the way they worked with music production applications. They explain it more on their on scan.co.uk's website. I won't go into that, the hows and the whys of that being. But the Intel offerings and the previous AMD architecture, the Phenom and the Phenom 2, like what I've got now, and indeed the Athlon, they've got like the named Athlon version of it, and they like the Deneb and things like that. In fact, I think my Phenom 2 might be the Deneb, which is similar to the Athlon 64 architecture anyway. Well, those Phenom 2 and Athlon architectures, and as well as the Intel, their architectures, the way they work, perform better with music applications. So that's why I picked that one before. I do like to have at least two different platforms in the home, so I can mooch between both, and know the ins and outs of each kind of platform from each vendor, Intel or AMD. It would be good. So I was thinking of upgrading the music production PC to a Ryzen, so it stays AMD. Obviously, I don't know how Ryzen architecture works with, like we mentioned before, with the music production software and how they operate. But the best thing I think for me to do once I've finished with this setup with this processor, this rig would make a brilliant music production PC and a brilliant upgrade from the one I got. I just put the Asus music card, sound card that I use for my music, into the rig, and it'd be good to go, and it'd be perfect. So that might be a good option for this processor to go on for the future. And my main rig here, it'd probably be better off having trying out one of the Ryzens here for my new main rig. So this processor will have a little bit of a lifespan in it yet. I do want to try the E5 1650 processor, or maybe even I can't get hold of one of them, one of the 4-core 8-threaded E5 1620s. They do have a higher TDP or power, output. It is higher there. I think they might be an older version of the Xeons on this platform, but they are unlocked, so you can overclock them relatively highly. It would be really good to see how far we can get the 1650, especially because that's another 6-core 12-thread, exactly the same as this processor. I've seen screenshots of the 1600 E5 1600 range Xeons reaching around 5 GHz, so aiming for 4 GHz, on air calling for a 6-core 12-thread, or even the 4-core 8-threaded 1620 would be, to benchmark one of them to see how much, improvement over this processor it would be. They tend to sell for about £70, the 6-core 12-thread 1650s in a Sandy Bridge core like this. Obviously like an older version of Sandy Bridge because it uses a higher wattage, but you can get the V2 versions of the chips. They're unlocked as well, but I think they sell for something more like between 189 to 250 on eBay. If you're going to pay those kind of prices, then you may as well just buy a new Ryzen platform, really, to be honest with you. So you'd probably have to make do with the V1 or the Sandy Bridge version of the chips, 70 odd, 80 odd pounds, and see how far you could overclock them and what benchmark performance levels you could get out of those if you was interested in them. But they are another option for this LGA 2011 platform, or the X79 chipset, to look into if you want to further that platform. It would be good to see if I could pick one up down the line. But yeah, there will be some life in this processor. If I don't pick up one of those, it's going to make a perfect music PC. At the minute, it's perfect for as a host processor for gaming. it's been quite a decent project. You have to understand that for £29 you're really not going to I know people are saying, you know, Xeons are not you know, they're not the brilliant gaming chip because they're not highly clocked, and they games only use up to 4 threads, so you'd be better off buying a, you know, a quad core that's, you know, 3.8 gigahertz or 3.6 gigahertz, of course, than a 2.5. But let's be honest, if you've got a quad core at around 2.5, 2.6, 2.8 gigahertz, and you've got a 6-core 12 thread at around about that same 2.5, 2.6, 7 gigahertz, then, you know, you're not going to really notice anything better in that quad core, because the performance levels are going to be exactly the same. It's just that your other, you know, your other 2 cores and the rest of the threads with the hyper-threading is just going to be redundant, and you know, you're both only going to be using 4 cores, and they're both going to be at the same speed. So, you know, it's one of them really. So you know, when it comes to a similar speed, you're better off picking this up for £29, because those extra cores, although they'll be redundant when it comes to gaming, you know, you're gonna use them elsewhere. You know, you're gonna be able to speed up your encoding and things like that, so up to no end in your video editing, exporting your videos, things like that. You know, it really does. It does add a lot of punch to my times for my videos to encode and things like that, in the video editing. So it has been rather good. I was somebody that used to upgrade and things like that all the while, every 6 months and things like that. But that I stopped doing that you know, a good few years back now. I was running an i7 overclocked i7 860 before this, and I just never bothered upgrading this rig, because I just didn't. I gamed, but I didn't just game, you know, as a lot like I used to. It was I'm more like a casual gamer now, and overclocked with a decent graphics card and an amount of RAM, the processor really did just still play the latest games that came out. So I really thought, you know, what's the point of me just upgrading all the while? It just got ridiculous. But I thought, you know, I'll try this as a little project, because it really did seem an appealing project. You know, I thought I'd try it as a project. For the money, you really cannot go wrong. £29 a processor with this, you know, 6 cores, 12 threads. It'd be ideal for something like folding. You know, you could get a folding farm going with you know, a few of these at £29 a piece. If you've still got one of these platforms, one of these boards, if you're an enthusiast, you know, and try out the various platforms as they come out, like I used to do. Obviously, I realised after a while that I was just wasting money doing that, and I used to buy different platforms when they come out and overclock them, see how far I could get the you know, the overclock and things like that. But you know, that's I'm not that mad anymore. I stuck with an overclocked Linfield i7 860 since about, I think it was about 2009, because it just that's how stale the CPU market had gone, that it was still pushing out, you know, with the R9 290X. It was still putting Far Cry 4. It was still pushing out like 60 odd frames per second. So you know, there really was no need for me to be upgrading it. I thought this would be a good, just a good little side project before the Ryzen and the Intel Kaby Lake and everything all came out, and it's ideal. So if you're looking for something for folding, you know, something cheap with 12 threads, you can't go wrong with something like this. Or even a cheap music production PC, brilliantly, you know, it'd be brilliantly fast, because they can use the you know, the multi-threading on most of the applications now. When it comes to, there's a lot of different ones I know that people prefer to use, but you know, Ableton Live's got the you know, the option to turn the multi-threading on, and it make use of it would be brilliant. For that, I know obviously people use Xeons for music production anyway over i7s. You can readily buy them available for that music production, so it would make a brilliant music production PC. Even though it's a few, you know, generations older, it'll still be lightning quick for that task.